Hello. I'm going to try to explain in this shortish video an example of a experience that I had recently that demonstrates my autism at play, and I want to try to get across to somebody who doesn't have autistic thoughts what it feels like, what it's like for the person that has them. Now, this is my second attempt to do this video, and I want to express in the way that I say the video and the words that I use the points that I'm making about what it's like. And I appreciate that that is quite difficult, and I'm kind of relying on an audience person understanding what it's like to feel anxious and stressed. And if you understand those feelings, then I think it'll make a lot more sense than if you don't or can't put yourself in someone's shoes that has those feelings. If you have a life where you don't tend to feel those emotions very often, or you suppress them, or you just don't feel those sort of things, you might find it difficult to understand. And I think conversely, if you don't have autism but you often are anxious and stressed, I think you might well understand completely what I'm about to say to you from your own experience. So obviously the point that the success of this video will depend as much on your experience and your understanding as my way of explaining it, my skill or my words that I use to explain it. And I'm going to express this event that happened last Thursday through my eyes, through my perception, and then I'm going to try and sort of see it from the other point of view as well when I kind of summarise. And before I start, I want to just define one term. If I ever refer during the next few minutes to my ego, what I mean by that is that portion of my brain that is devoted to worrying about what other people think of me. And it can be quite a big part of my brain, and it's not something I can control, but it definitely exists. So, the context then. This was last Thursday. It was the events leading up to my second dialysis appointment. My first appointment had been on Saturday. On Saturday was this happens. My first appointment was on Thursday, and so I had been to the place, experienced the actual event myself with my partner. But on this occasion, my partner was at work and wasn't able to take me or bring me back from the dialysis thing. So this all centred around me getting to the dialysis centre in Boston, which is about 40 minutes drive from my home. Now, on the Thursday, there had been a taxi booked to take me, which I'd cancelled because my partner could take me in. But obviously, on the Saturday, I had to rely on transport provided by the hospital. And I had one thing that was very useful was I had a text which told me the time that the driver was going to arrive and the name of the driver. And they said they were going to arrive at 11:36. And my appointment was at 1 o'clock, and it's about a 40-minute drive. So, when the driver arrived, I was expecting to have a taxi. And the first thing that happened that was a bit disconcerting for me was that when the guy arrived a little bit earlier, he arrived about 11:25, and it was an ambulance car, a liveried ambulance car. And I'd kind of got myself ready to have an interaction with like a taxi driver, but this was a whole different situation to deal with. And so as I walked towards the vehicle, I had to make a decision. Am I going to get in the back or the front? And I thought, I wanted to go in the back and just sit there and have my headphones on and just be ignored. But my ego was saying, you can't do that, that's rude. He'll think you're treating him like a taxi. So I had to get, my brain said, you've got to get in the front. You've got to engage with him. So I got myself in the front of the car and we had a pleasant chat. And I said, oh, are you, I don't know, let's say Gary. He said, oh, how do you know that? Because I said, oh, I had a text. And he didn't have any idea about the text system. So then he was chatting to me about his job and asking me about me. And in that scenario, I'm okay with that. I can do that. I can come across as being a rational, normal human being, one-on-one, if I'm sort of able to concentrate on that. So I was able to answer his questions with sort of frivolous answers that were true but didn't go anywhere. In that situation, I have to judge very quickly, is this a conversation where I have to be honest and open, or is this a conversation where I need to have small talk? They're two distinct things. One is an act, one is fake, one is pretending to be sociable, sort of, pretending. And I'm not, obviously I'm guessing everyone feels like the same, and the other is sort of having a proper conversation. But with a stranger, having a proper conversation is not really acceptable. So you've got to go into this is my short, small talk conversation persona, and I can just answer the questions honestly but short, and then quickly ask a question back and get him to talk about himself. That's how I deflect. I ask questions, and then the other person, if they like talking, will talk for ages about themselves, and then they won't remember to ask me a question, which is answer, and then leave that to another person for them. So that's the way I've managed to deflect the kind of attention from me back onto the other person. And that works pretty well. I can do that. I can have a conversation. I could meet you in the street, have a conversation with you for 20 minutes, half an hour, small talk, and you wouldn't know any different. You wouldn't know me from anyone else. This is when it started to go wrong. About 20 minutes in, I realised I didn't know where my phone was, and I was carrying with me a bag, and in that bag there was 2 packets of crisps, a bottle of water, my headphones and an iPad, and I hoped my phone would be in there because it wasn't in my pocket. And the reason why it's important is because my partner had specifically told me to contact them when I left and when I got there, and just let me know how it's going, because they knew I was going to struggle, and also they were worried for me. And so I was about to send a message saying I've left the house now, and I couldn't find my phone, and I thought I better look at my bag, and I thought there's crisps in there, and this is where my ego was going, you can't let him know you've got crisps because you're fat and he'll know you just eat crisps all the time. That's in my mind thinking this. So I'm trying to discreetly look in my bag for my phone, and in the end I just gave up, just looked through it and found out I didn't have my phone there. And so I explained how I hang up my phone, but I just could not bring myself to say, can you go back? And I thought I just have to carry on now, I'm going to have to deal with it. So I just pretended it was not a big deal, and we carried on. So that's the first thing. Around about this time, either just before or just after this, I became aware that he was actually going, it wasn't just me who was picking up, he was also picking up other people on his route, and that was why he'd been so early. So he couldn't go back because otherwise he'd be late to pick up other people. So I then realised, it's not just me, is it? It's going to be other people I'm going to have to engage with, and that started to raise the tension in my head. So the driver was saying there's a woman called Sheila, let's call her Sheila, that isn't coming today because she's in hospital. I usually go and see her, but I'm going to go and see Keith, let's say. And he said, Keith's Geordie, and then we just went to pick up Keith. So now I was in the front of the car and I was thinking, how do I deal with this situation? Do I have to engage now with two people? And I don't want to do that. I'm just getting stressed. I've got my phone, I'm just worrying about that. I'm worrying about what I'm going to do, and now I've got to engage with another person. I can't cope with it. So I was beginning to not cope with it. So my way of coping was to just sit quietly out the window while they talked to themselves, because they knew each other really well. They were chatting about their stuff, and I thought I'll sit here and look at the window and hope they'll talk to me. And Gary, the driver, introduced me and Keith. I said, "Oh, hello," like a normal person would do. But then I just sort of sat at the front and I just tried to look at the window. And this is the point at which I first realised my nose was getting a bit moist and my eyes were getting a bit moist. And so I was trying to discreetly dab my eyes and dab my nose without them thinking I was crying, and not engage with them, but not be rude, not just being rude. So this is where the next thing happened. And the next thing was what they were talking about. The ratcheting of the tension came up further because they were talking about Sheila, who was in hospital, and Keith, who I think knew of her, was saying, "I don't think she's going to come out. I think she's going to be stuck there now," meaning she was going there to die. And then they started talking about some other woman who, let's call her Mary, and they said, "Oh, Mary's not coming to dialysis anymore. She's decided to stop doing it because she's fed up with it." Now, when you stop doing dialysis because you're fed up with it, in inverted commas, that just means it's not something you just decide to do. "Oh, I'll do something else for a bit." That means you've given up on life. You're going to die. There's no other explanation for that. So I'm sitting in this car with these two guys talking about these things, and my brain is going, I do not want to be in this car with people talking about their imminent deaths, and I'm part of that group now. We're all dialysis patients. We're all going to the same part building. We're not going to different things. We're all going for the same purpose. My brain is going, this is unpleasant. I don't want to be here, and I don't want to engage with this. I don't want to think about this. Is this my life now? Am I now just going into this boring thing, or this degrading thing that men end up thinking, I can't do anymore, I want to die? So, and then that made me more emotional, which I had to try and hide my eyes watering, and that made me think, well, don't let them see you doing that. So my brain was going, my ego was going, you can't let them see you emotional, and I was getting more and more wound up, and I would say mild panic at this point, trying to hide it from the people. That's as bad as the thing itself. There's the thoughts that are going through my head, which are irrational, I know. And this is the other thing I want to say. I'm not saying these things are rational. These are definitely feelings which are irrational, and they're definitely not controllable, but they are real, and they exist, and they happen because I'm in a situation where I'm uncomfortable. And so I've got this feeling of anxiety building up. I'm hearing this conversation, which is making it worse. I'm getting emotional, which is upsetting my brain, going, you can't show that. You meant to not. This is just a normal situation. Stop getting upset. Stop showing them. Make sure you hide that. Make sure they don't see that you're getting upset. And I was thinking, don't talk to me. I don't know what I'm going to say. So that journey went on for so long. We must have arrived about 12:30. So from pickup to end, it was an hour journey, with about 40 minutes of it me getting more and more panicked after I realised I hadn't got my phone. So we'd now arrived at the place, and I had been there before to the building, and I sort of knew what to expect to some extent. This is the first time I'd arrived with other people, and so I sort of gallantly said to Keith, after you, so let him go through the door, and then I just got behind him, and then he got us in, and then I wasn't expecting this, but I probably should have done. It was 12:30, the appointment was 1 o'clock. We walked into the waiting room, and the waiting room was full of people. And there must have been about 15 people there. Some of them were clearly carers for people that are having dialysis, and some were people having dialysis, and it was just full of people. And I went straight to the toilet, and I sort of used the toilet briefly for a little wee, and then I sort of blowed my nose, dubbed my eyes, and I took some breaths, and I thought, you can do this, come on, you can do this. And I just took some breaths, and then I went back into this waiting room, and I sat down at the first chair I came across, and a sort of rows of chairs. I was sort of facing Keith, and Keith was next to some people either side of him. There's someone next to me to my left, but no one to my right side, sort of the toilet to my right. And then there's to my far right, there was another person sitting there, just ignoring everyone. And I had a quick look around, and there was obviously no one I knew. Other people knew each other, because obviously they come to there quite regularly, and they were sort of having a chat with each other, catching up. And how's Sheila? Oh, Sheila's not going to come in. I think she's in hospital. She's going to she's about to die. She's not going to be with us much longer. So I had to hear all that again, and then I just thought, I got my iPad out and I looked at it and I just played a game. And then the first panic I had, mini panic should I say, was that my game requires internet, and when I was last time here, I did get them to put the Wi-Fi code in, but I wasn't aware if that would stay in or not. And when I first got out, I didn't have my phone with me, so I couldn't hotspot my phone to make sure my iPad worked. But luckily, that was quite short-lived because I was connected to their Wi-Fi, so luckily it did work. So I just played my game, looked down, didn't look up, and I just wanted to get through this. But this is where my brain was just not helping me. So my brain was going, you don't want to be here, you're really emotional, upset. And I was sort of, my eyes were watering, and I was sort of I was on the edge of tears, and I was thinking, don't look at me, I don't want to have any attention, please don't ask me how I am, seriously, I don't know how to explain it. I can't explain to you what autism is in the moment, because A, it's hard to explain, and B, I'm too emotional to explain it. If anyone talks to me, I'm going to burst into tears. I can't stay here, I've got to get out. You've got to leave, get out of here, run, run, run. That's what brain was saying. And I was thinking, I can't, I've got to stay, I've got to stay here. And from the outside, I looked like just some person ignoring everyone else, playing his game, not engaging, maybe looking quite rude. But this is the point I want to make. I'm not trying to be rude. It's not that people are great. All the people I've come across are lovely people. It's nothing to do with their personalities or who they are. It's just the concept of having people and company in an unknown environment is just really inducing of anxiety. And that's what the autism does. It's nothing to do with people. People are great. It's to do with the situation, and then my brain makes it worse. So I'm thinking, I don't want to be here, don't ask me how I am, it's making me more and more upset. My ego's going, don't let them look at you, because if they see you crying, they're going to wonder how you're a weirdo. And they're looking at you, aren't they? Everyone's looking at you, thinking, why are you not engaging with them? Why are you sitting on your own, looking at your iPad? Why are you crying? For goodness sake, don't start crying. Don't let them look at you, and whatever you do, if they ask you where you are, don't you dare run out of here. It's my ego talking to me. So I'm getting wound up in my head, frustrated, anxious, and panicking about the situation. And at the end of the day, it's all for nothing. I realise it's all for nothing. Because all that's happened is, I've got into a car with somebody else and been brought to a hospital appointment. That's all that's happened. But my head has got me so anxious and panicked. I'm on the edge of tears, and I'm worrying about that. And it's like a spiral of anxiety and panic and frustration, and I wanted to escape. The fight or flight in my head's getting in place. My mind is running like 10 to the dozen, trying to work out what to do, how to deal with the situation. And I'm sitting there just trying to be passive, trying to be not seen, trying to be invisible. And obviously the more I'm trying to do that, the more I'm probably obvious to other people. So I appreciate that it might sound really weird, but believe me, it's real. It's a real emotional problem, and I hated it. Right, let's carry on with the story then. So at 1 o'clock, they opened the doors and they started to move in, and I wasn't sure who was obviously carers and cared for. So I sort of thought, well, I want to wait to the end and go in last, sort of hang out at the back. But if I do that, I might not get a choice of bed. And I want to be at the first bed by the door, next to only one other person. So I got myself fourth in the line, and so I could see what they were doing, because I didn't know what the process was, and I could see they walked in, they sort of weighed themselves, and they went to a bed. There wasn't any particular organised system about it. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing, so I followed them. I sort of smiled at the lady in front of me, didn't say anything but smiled, and then weighed myself, then went straight to the first bed behind me, and luckily there was a nurse there. I sat there, said, can I sit here? She said yes. And I don't know if it was saved for me or not, but it was available, and I got there and I sat down, and luckily for me, pretty quickly, so I sat down and I thought, I can't even bring myself to close that curtain that's right by me. I was so wound up, but luckily the nurse that was there did do that. I don't know if they did do it as standard. She only did about halfway, but that was enough to give me just a little bit of privacy from the rest of the. I couldn't see the rest of the ward. They could probably see my legs, my feet, but that was fine. I was happy with that. So I sat down on the bed, and they were sort of fiddling about with their paperwork and stuff. And I was just, at this point, I was immediately much more relaxed. And how I felt lying there, just seconds later, with that curtain half pulled across and no one to my left, was just completely different to how I was in the waiting room. And that's just because of my head. So I wasn't perfectly relaxed, obviously, because I had this thing to go through. I still had to deal with an unknown nurse. I'd never met them before. They didn't know me, I didn't know them. So that engagement, that's one-on-one, I could deal with that. But I just felt, when I laid there, I thought, this is much better. And I don't want to ever go through that feeling again that I was in the waiting room. So I think part of this video came from that when I sat down on the bed. I thought, I wonder if it's possible for me to express what I've just felt in my video to help other people understand what it's like to have an autistic brain. So that's where it came from. And I also thought, I never want to have public transport again. I want to either drive myself in, or my partner drive me in, and I never want to have to go through that again. And I want to make sure I arrive right before my appointment, not have to wait in the waiting room, and then I want to make sure I have this bed. So there is a way in which I can make this work for me, that I have to do that again, but I do not want to rely on anyone else providing the transport. So that's kind of a summary of what my mind goes through when I'm in a situation like that, where I'm uncomfortable and it just spirals very quickly out of control due to my autism, my autistic brain, and my ego. And then competing, almost like competing. My autism, sort of, my autistic brain sort of saying, I want to be on my own, I want to be left alone, and my ego saying, that's weird, don't be rude. And then sort of that's I suppose a good way which I kind of relate to it. It's not quite as simple as that, but it'll do for now. Right, so that is 23 minutes. I'm going to leave it there. Happy to answer any questions anyone might have, because in respect to this, I'm an expert to how it affects me. I'll be interested to know if you have any similar feelings. Oh, before I go, I'm gonna, because of that experience, I'm now thinking I probably need to get this diagnosed formally, because at the moment it's just me recognising, me and people around me recognising it as a problem. But I probably need to get a professional to tell me that it's a diagnosis, and then I may have access to some sort of support that will then sort of be able to make my life a bit easier. I don't know if that's possible or not. I'm not expecting anything in particular, but I think just having a diagnosis might just in itself be useful. So I'm thinking about doing that, and I'll let you know if that goes anywhere. I think it's probably something I should do, but I'm not in the right frame of mind to do it right now. Right, there you go. Thank you for listening, and I hope that makes sense. Bye bye.